For decades, we have searched the stars, not merely for planets or signals, but for anomalies. We look for those rare, defiant moments when the cosmos refuses to follow the rules. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope, JWST, may have found exactly that. What began as a routine observation of 3I/Atlas, the third interstellar object ever recorded in our solar system, has transformed into something far stranger, far darker, and infinitely more significant. Because deep in the vast, cold void beyond Mars, the Webb detected something it shouldn't have. It wasn't just light, it was artificial light. A glow that behaves like no comet or asteroid. A signature that follows no known physics of refraction or reflection. Now, astronomers and astrophysicists are left with a single question that chills them to the core. What is 3I/Atlas really? Stay with us as we dive deep into the data that has just reignited the oldest and most terrifying question of all time. Are we alone? The anomaly. 3I/Atlas was first spotted as a faint speck on the edge of the solar system, moving with a trajectory no local object could follow. Clearly interstellar, it was born beyond the gravitational embrace of our sun, flung across the galaxy by some unknown force, and is now drifting silently through our neighborhood. At first, it was treated as a cosmic curiosity, much like its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov. But even in the earliest images, something fell off. Unlike most interstellar objects, 3I/Atlas was unusually bright, and not in a way that made sense. Its magnitude didn't correspond to its estimated composition or size. It shimmered with an unnatural consistency. Its brightness neither faded as expected nor flared with any sign of dust release or outgassing. Traditional comets tend to brighten in bursts as ice sublimates, but this one remained steady, as if it were powered from within. Telescopes across the globe turned to observe it, and the Webb, with its unparalleled ability to peer into the infrared spectrum, was brought in to decode the mystery. What it saw changed everything. The heat signature. Perched a million miles from Earth at the Lagrange point, the James Webb Space Telescope was designed to see the unseen, to cut through the glare of stars and reveal what is hidden in the shadows. Its gaze upon 3I/Atlas was expected to clarify the confusion. Instead, it amplified it. The telescope's instruments detected a centralized thermal emission that didn't correlate with any natural reflection of sunlight. Typically, a comet shines due to the sun's rays bouncing off ice and dust. But 3I/Atlas showed an internal heat signature, something that radiated from the core outward. This wasn't scattered light. It was emitted light. The thermal mapping revealed a pattern that followed no known distribution curve of natural objects. It pulsed faintly, irregularly, and, most disturbingly, seemed to cycle at intervals. That subtle, repeating rhythm suggested design rather than randomness. Some scientists at the European Space Agency and NASA proposed exotic explanations: radioactive decay, alien isotopes, or subsurface friction. But as more data arrived, those theories collapsed. The only consistent explanation left on the table was the one no one wanted to write down. This object might be powered. The metallic profile. As data from Hubble, Webb, and terrestrial observatories piled up, a profile of 3I/Atlas began to emerge, and it looked nothing like any known celestial body. Trajectory. Too precise to be chaotic, as if it were choosing its path, subtly adjusting course through gravity wells. Rotation, unnaturally stable, with a tumbling motion that defied standard inertial drift. Structure, the lack of a cometary tail, even when passing near solar radiation, suggested a shell or casing, perhaps something protecting it from the heat. Then came the most controversial finding. The albedo, or surface reflectivity, was measured to be nearly perfect in parts, approaching that of polished metal. Not rock, not dust, not ice metal. The implications hit the astronomical community like a shockwave. If it was metallic, structured, and emitting energy, then we were no longer observing a natural object. We were observing technology. Suddenly, the term probe was whispered in hallways. Beacon, craft, even artifact. The idea that this might be an alien spacecraft was no longer relegated to conspiracy forums. It was now quietly circulating in institutional emails behind encrypted firewalls. The signal. Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence wasn't the trajectory, the thermal emissions, or the strange metallic signature. It was the light. Photometric analysis showed something chilling. The light coming from 3I/Atlas was focused in a narrow spectrum band. In other words, it wasn't a broad natural reflection of sunlight, but a controlled emission of specific wavelengths. This is precisely what we do with laser communication systems, LED arrays, and spacecraft signal beacons. Furthermore, this band included frequencies often used in guidance and communication systems on Earth. Not only that, but the intensity of the light seemed to respond ever so slightly to solar radiation, as though some onboard system was adjusting it in real time. It flickered not at random, but with a strange, intermittent pulse. Astronomers ran the data through known signal models. The results were inconclusive, but not meaningless. Some claimed the pulses resembled binary sequences. Others said it might be a rotating power source. But the conclusion was undeniable. This was not a passive object. It was doing something deliberate, and we were watching it live. As the data poured in, a team of astrophysicists from Harvard and MIT ran a deep signal analysis over the electromagnetic emissions coming from 3I/Atlas. At first glance, the frequencies seemed random, just noise scattered across the spectrum. But when they applied Fourier transforms to isolate cyclical patterns, something emerged. Within the static, buried like a whisper beneath the chaos, was a structured repeating pulse too precise to be natural. It wasn't a standard binary, nor a typical modulation used in human technology, but it bore the unmistakable fingerprint of intentional encoding. Some speculated it could be a beacon, a repeating broadcast intended for receivers not of earthly origin. Others theorized it could be telemetry, a constant data stream sent back to wherever this object came from. The unsettling part was this. Whatever the message was, it hadn't changed since the Webb first detected it. It was as if 3I/Atlas wasn't trying to talk to us, but to someone else, and maybe that someone had already heard it. The awakening. News of the discovery spread quickly through the highest levels of defense and scientific institutions. A confidential report, circulated internally within NASA and then leaked to an unnamed journalist, revealed that top officials were already coordinating with global space agencies to determine whether 3I/Atlas posed a threat. Some scientists argued it was benign, an ancient probe, perhaps centuries old, on a pre-programmed route through the stars. Others weren't so optimistic. They raised questions no one could answer. If it's transmitting, who is receiving? If it has light emissions, does it also have propulsion? If it's here by design, why now? The report mentioned the possibility, however remote, that 3I/Atlas was not just passing through, but observing, tracking planetary alignments, electromagnetic fields, or even advanced civilizations. This possibility ignited panic behind the scenes because if this object wasn't alone, then something else might be on the way. Something that sent it. Then, just when astronomers believed 3I/Atlas had settled into a predictable trajectory, something unexpected happened. Its luminosity spiked dramatically. This wasn't a gradual increase caused by its proximity to the sun. It was a sudden flare captured in real time by the James Webb Telescope and confirmed by several ground-based observatories. The object's brightness increased by nearly 40% in under 2 minutes, then stabilized at a new elevated level. No natural explanation fit the data. There was no impact event, no solar-wind interaction, no fragmentary disintegration. It was as if someone, or something, had flipped a switch. Shortly after the anomalous brightening, orbital calculations from multiple space agencies detected something else. 3I/Atlas was no longer precisely following its projected path. It had shifted slightly, subtly but measurably. Gravity alone couldn't account for the alteration. Even solar radiation pressure, often invoked as a scapegoat for small course changes in lightweight objects, didn't add up. This shift was deliberate, and more unsettling was where the new trajectory pointed, deeper into the solar system, with an adjusted inclination that brought it closer to the plane of Earth's orbit. The object was no longer just passing through. It had, in effect, changed lanes. We were watching a vessel in motion, a vessel with intent. The contact event. As speculation reached a boiling point, a bold team at the SETI Institute decided to take the risk no one else would. They transmitted a focused radio pulse directly toward the projected location of 3I/Atlas. The message contained universal mathematical constants, the periodic table, and basic visual representations of humanity. It was meant to be a cosmic handshake, a cautious hello. Days passed, then a week. No response. But just when the experiment was about to be archived as another unanswered call into the dark, one of the monitoring stations in Chile registered something strange. A narrow band return pulse, off frequency, distorted, but unmistakably timed to mirror the original message. It wasn't a reply in language. It wasn't an echo. It was a ping, a return signal with just enough variance to imply it wasn't a passive reflection. It had been processed. It had been sent back. But what shook the SETI team the most wasn't the signal itself. It was the timing. Because the response came precisely 72 hours after transmission, to the second. It meant something had not only received our message, it had calculated the delay and answered deliberately. Following the detection of the return ping, observatories around the globe began experiencing technical anomalies. Webb's infrared instruments showed erratic thermal mapping for the first time since launch. Hubble's gyroscopic sensors registered microfluctuations despite stable orientation. Ground-based telescopes experienced what were initially dismissed as software glitches, misaligned star charts, inexplicable pixel distortions, and frozen data streams, precisely when focused on 3I/Atlas. But these glitches didn't happen randomly. They occurred in synchronized windows, as if coordinated, as if someone or something didn't want us looking too closely. A theory emerged from a black ops think tank buried deep within the European Space Agency. The object wasn't just emitting signals. It was jamming us. It was interfering selectively. The implications were staggering. A passive visitor doesn't hide its identity. A scout does. If the object was actively managing what we could see, and when we could see it, then we weren't watching it. We were being allowed to. The conclusion. And then silence. Within days of the signal event and the technical malfunctions, updates from Webb were delayed, restricted, and eventually rerouted. Public logs were no longer accessible. NASA simply stopped commenting. The astrophysics community was split. Some believed the agencies were working to validate the discovery before going public. Others believed something far darker, that the truth had already been confirmed and was now being contained. In a last-ditch effort to understand what they were observing, a coalition of mathematicians and astronomers turned to probability theory and pattern recognition. They discovered the most terrifying pattern of all. The object's path through the solar system, while seemingly natural, mirrored a Fibonacci arc when plotted against planetary positions, an ancient spiral of proportional beauty found throughout nature, and coincidentally, in many Earth-based communication protocols. Furthermore, the timing of its course corrections, the light flares, and even the ping response correlated with prime number sequences. The odds of this occurring naturally are astronomically low. These patterns were chosen. It meant this object, 3I/Atlas, wasn't just flying through the solar system. It was navigating with mathematical precision, as if following a map or a schedule. As the dust of confusion begins to settle, one truth remains impossible to ignore. 3I/Atlas was never just a rock. From the unnatural light it emitted to the signal it returned, from the rare materials to the calculated change in trajectory. Every piece of this enigma points to a single uncomfortable conclusion. We have not been alone for a very long time, and perhaps we were never meant to know. The James Webb Telescope, built to peer into the birth of galaxies, may have instead caught a glimpse of something designed to look back. something ancient, deliberate, and watching. Not from the safety of a distant star system, but from the threshold of our own celestial neighborhood. And yet, silence reigns. The agencies refuse to speak. The data is withheld. The world, it seems, has been deemed not ready. But we saw the light. We tracked the path. And now we ask the question that terrifies even the most rational minds. What happens next? Was 3I/Atlas simply passing through, cataloging our little world before continuing its voyage? Or was it merely the first of many? A probe leading the way for something greater, something waiting for a signal to move forward. In the end, it may not matter whether 3I/Atlas was a machine or something else entirely. What matters is that it came, it saw, and it responded. And now, somewhere in the cold, endless dark, something may be turning its attention toward the blue planet that blinked first. The countdown, perhaps, has already begun. And the universe, once again, reminds us we're not the center. We are the observed. I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.